It's my pleasure to now welcome to the stage Archbishop John Kennedy, Stephen Millies, and Kerry Alys Robinson. Please welcome them. So let me begin by introducing each of you to our audience. I have beside me here, direct from Rome, the Most Reverend John J. Kennedy, who's the titular Archbishop of Ossero and the Secretary, listen to this title, the Secretary for the Disciplinary Section at the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. It's a mouthful. He was ordained a priest in 1993 and consecrated a bishop in 2024. Archbishop Kennedy obtained his doctorate in canon law with a specialization in jurisprudence from the Pontifical Gregorian University. Please join me in welcoming Archbishop Kennedy. Next is Stephen P. Millies. Stephen is a professor of public theology and the director of the Bernardin Center at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. He's a political theorist, and his academic work explores the intersection between history, religion, and politics. Stephen is the author of Good Intentions, A History of Catholic Voters' Road from Roe to Trump, and A Consistent Ethic of Life, Navigating Catholic Engagement with U.S. Politics. Please join me in welcoming Stephen. And finally, we have Kerry Alys Robinson. Kerry is the president and CEO of Catholic Charities USA. She's an expert in Catholic leadership and philanthropy and is passionate, and I want to underscore passionate, about the mission of the church to alleviate human suffering. Kerry is the author of the award-winning book, Imagining Abundance, Fundraising, Philanthropy, and a Spiritual Call to Service. She's also a member of the Raskob Foundation for Catholic Activities and foundations and donors interested in Catholic activities. Please join me in welcoming Kerry. So, as with all panels, we want this to be engaging, and we want this to be interactive, and hopefully a little fun. So I've got a set of questions, but God knows how this will evolve. So let's use this as a prompt. So what are you seeing and experiencing as you work with others to promote the work of the church and elevate human flourishing?
Oh. I knew I shouldn't have sat on the end.
Ladies first.
Well, first of all, I arrived yesterday. This is my very first time at a Catholic Health Association convening. And as soon as I walked into the hotel, I felt immediately welcomed. It is as though I have been introduced to kindred spirits. You are speaking with the same language. You care about the same things. It's remarkable to me how aligned Catholic Charities and Catholic Health really, truly is. But full disclosure, I am also married to an infectious disease specialist, a doctor who serves as the chair of the Department of Epidemiology of Microbial Diseases at Yale University. He needs a marketer, they all do. But so for personal and professional and vocational reasons, I am just so indebted to each of you for what you do, for the leadership that you manifest in very, very challenging times, for refusing to abandon your values, for allowing your heart to break by some of the cruelties that we are bearing witness to. I don't think we say it enough. I am profoundly, profoundly grateful to you for your leadership and for inviting me here.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you.
Like Kerry, I'm very grateful to be here with you. This is also my first time at a CHA meeting, and also I feel a little bit out of sorts because, as Sister Mary said in my introduction, I'm not a theologian at all. Although I teach at a theological school, I always tell my students that I've never studied theology, I only teach it. Fair warning, that's my full disclosure, but I came in yesterday from a meeting of the Catholic Campus Ministers Association, where about 24 hours ago, I was giving a presentation on what's called New Life for a Consistent Ethic. And it was a very rich conversation with people who are working directly with young adults today, not just on Catholic campuses, but campuses around the United States of every type and description. And one of the things they're seeing, and I'm also seeing in my own work with students, is a new kind of hopefulness. Young people today are different from us, and in some ways they've suffered for it. But in other ways, they see through the madness in a way that we don't. And I think it's very important for adults to be present with them. What's truly exciting about that, I think, is what we have been getting from Pope Leo, what we have been getting from Pope Francis, that even in the darkness of these times, a response is coming from the church that is speaking to all of us. It's offering hope. And I also think there's a message there for young people that they're ready and waiting for. I'm very encouraged by it.
Wonderful.
This is my first time to be at CHA. I've been in contact with Sister Mary and some of the others as you have come to Rome over the last number of years, but it's my first time to participate in one of your gatherings. And this morning I was sitting at the back of the room and just watching, seeing how people were interacting. And what I experienced was what Kerry was saying, was this great number of people who knew each other, who were friendly, who already understood what the mission is all about. And the atmosphere and the temperature was one of collaboration and one of unity. And I noticed that the title of your conference is United for Change. And I really am convinced, after 24 years of working in the Roman Curia, this is my 4th Pope and my 5th prefect, so it's been quite a long time, that the future is in unity and the future is definitely in collaboration. But just to pick up on something that Stephen was saying, when I was in New York in March of this year celebrating confirmation, I had a dinner with a son of a family that I know, and he wanted to take me out to this lovely steak restaurant. New York is full of them, of course. And he was telling me that he's got a great job, he's got his apartment, he's got his car, he's got a great salary, room for promotion. And then he said, but what I'm looking for, and this is picking up on your point about young people being different, what I'm looking for is, and he sort of paused. And I said, are you looking for meaning? He said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I think the church is probably one of the only organizations in the entire world that can offer meaning, because our scope is not just about getting you through college or getting you to a job. It's beyond. The whole purpose of the Catholic faith is to help people to save their souls.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move on. We might float back to that in a minute, but how does our Catholic faith intersect with secular priorities? And this is a 3-part question, so I'm going to take it in 3 sections. Let me let you respond to that first. I'm seeing you smile, Stephen.
Well, I mean, it's my obsession. And I won't say I've made a lot of money, but I've made a career out of it. I think the answer is awkwardly, for good reasons. Because, as Archbishop was saying, the church's job is different. The church exists as a ministry to the world, in the world, but that also means that the church has to exist within and among people who believe differently, even inside the church sometimes, as we know. But the church has to meet secular institutions and the secular world prepared to encounter plurality, prepared to encounter difference. And throughout the history of the church, that's been very hard. We haven't always been good at it, and in some ways, sometimes we've been quite awful about it, actually. These last couple of centuries, we've turned a corner. I don't think we're all the way there yet, but I'm very encouraged by a lot of what I read, both the bishops and the Holy Father, and also a lot of theologians are writing, I think, about this too in interesting ways. We're thinking about what it means to encounter and engage in dialogue with a world filled with difference in a new way, and it is good and exciting.
I would say that's very true, and a lot of young people that I meet have lots of questions for me, and they're not just, oh, what time do you get up at and what time do you celebrate Mass? They're really heart-searching, soul-searching questions. I had a couple from the Philippines who live now in Florida, and they came last week with about 40 of their friends and relatives to celebrate 25 years of their parents, their wedding anniversary, and we had a renewal of their wedding ceremony with the renewal of the vows in one of the chapels in St. Peter's Basilica. But the kids, who were about 20, 22, they were asking me so many questions that the parents had to tell them to stop because they wanted to get on with starting the ceremony. And I think that's something, the kids are very different. In the work that I do, it's all to do, about 70% mostly, with the cases of child sexual abuse committed by clerics throughout the world. That's what my daily bread is. And when I was speaking to the group of about some of the 1.5 million young people who came to Rome last year for the Jubilee of Youth, they also began to ask, what do I do? And I said, well, during the time of the crisis, and they looked at me and they said, sorry, what crisis are you talking about? They are beyond the crisis. They're seeing the church in a new way. They're seeing the church as something really valuable to offer, and they're on board.
When you talk about meaning and the search for meaning with young adults, I think we are all searching for that. It's one of the reasons I so value the Catholic Church and my relationship to it, my love for it. Father Gino Walsh famously said, followers of Jesus Christ are promised two things. Your life will have meaning and you will live forever. And if you get a better offer, take it. But it's true, you know, the religious mission of the church has certainly formed the person that I am, but the fact that it is the largest humanitarian network in the world should render all of us committed to its health and vitality. And so even in the wake of the abuse crisis, the worst thing that happened to the church in our lifetime, our commitment is to call and effect reconciliation, healing for justice for survivors, and call the church to greater levels of accountability and transparency, trustworthiness, and holiness. And I said to you backstage that I'm grateful that you are in the position you are in and the work that you do, and we are all better for it.
You know, many of you in the audience may remember Monsignor Brian Hare. Brian is a longtime friend of Catholic healthcare, and I remember, I wasn't here, but reading, I think it was an assembly presentation that he gave back in the 90s. And he spoke about Catholic healthcare being a religiously grounded institution that effectively works within a secular culture. And how do we hold that in balance? When do we see our values supporting the culture and society? And when do they conflict? And where is their resistance? And I can't help, Kerry, to think about what Catholic Charities has been through around immigration as a case in point, where we saw direct conflict with secular movements and where our values lie. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, this has been a trying time, but not just for Catholic Charities, for every sector, leaders of every sector I know, faith-based or or otherwise, have been navigating really difficult days, interpreting every executive order, every policy proposal, defending against what seems to be the daily onslaught to human dignity, warding against the violent rhetoric which seems so glib. It's tough. But I think in times of upheaval or chaos or crisis, it allows you to pare right down to who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And that's certainly been my experience at Catholic Charities these past 3 years that I've been with the network. We know exactly who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And no amount of government funding or lack of it is going to impede us in carrying out the mission of the gospel. I've been so happy and grateful to our bishops in the United States in this moment. I feel incredibly supported by them. Their words almost daily now in explaining why welcoming the stranger is a gospel mandate, why care for the poor can't be separated from authentic Christianity. And then to have Pope Leo, who cannot be dismissed by Americans as not understanding the American context. He is speaking in English, it is not translated, and he has a Chicago accent. And he's the most admired leader in the world right now. Thank God for Pope Leo on the global stage when there are other famous people on the global stage who don't exude the kind of values that we, I think, yearn for.
And I think, speaking of Pope Leo, the recent encyclical on AI is another case in point where we're going to see those, resistance going on.
I'd like to echo Kerry's gratitude because I think anybody who is our age has grown up with Catholic healthcare as being just part and parcel of life, and we are the heirs of centuries of gratitude by men and women who trained to be healthcare professionals and who reinvested the money back into the religious order for the training of more religious to staff hospitals and to offer that high standard of care, which has been just more than medical care, because it was people living out their vocations and transmitting the love and the charity and the kindness of Christ through everything that they did, from the smallest detail to the most complicated procedure. And a couple of years ago, you might remember seeing images of Notre Dame in Paris being burnt to the ground. I had a question at that time, and I said, will this be the end of the high-profile Catholic presence in France, or will it be a wake-up call? Well, Macron decided that within 5 years it was going to be rebuilt. And in many ways, he was slightly ahead of his time, because when the French bishops came to see us recently, they told us, it is wonderful. They said, we are having so many young people coming to be Catholic and being baptized and confirmation. And he said, and you know the way the French do, like this. He said, I'm not making this up. He says, we are wondering why this is happening, and we do not know the answer. It is not because of something we are doing ourselves. So it is something bigger and beyond, which is recognizing the deep religious tradition and gratitude, and also realizing, as we have said, that with leaders like Pope Leo and good bishops that we have around the world, that there is actually something to hold on to and to hope for. And if I can just say one more thing, because every day of the week I see bishops from all over the world, mostly because they have problems that we want to resolve or because we have solutions that can help them. But the Archbishop of Sydney, Anthony Fisher, has for a number of years been projecting a sacred image onto the cathedral in Sydney. And last time he projected an image of Fra Angelico, the famous Italian artist, which was the Nativity, the birth of Christ. And I just thought, we shouldn't be afraid to be Catholic, and we shouldn't be afraid to show what we do. I know for centuries we've been doing things quietly in a sort of a biblical way of not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And we don't really draw attention to the really good things that we do. But we could, moving forward, begin to highlight and begin to show the world that there are signs of hope, that there is good in the world, and there are committed people who are translating their faith into practice. So I was suggesting to some bishops, maybe for the possible Jubilee of 2033, they're talking about this in the Vatican, 2,000 years of the birth of Christ, of the death of Christ, rather, that maybe all the cathedrals in the world should show some religious image on the front of their cathedrals to point out the centrality of the faith, and maybe for Catholic hospitals, you could do the same.
Wonderful idea.
Great idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Stephen, is there anything you want to respond to the resistance?
Well, I'm cautious to follow. So much Gallic charm. I'm not even going to try. No, I think that, when the church enters these spaces, in ministry, in public witness, in all sorts of other ways, when the church enters these spaces, it's awkward for reasons I talked about at the beginning. I think one of the points that we're circling here is that the challenge for us is not so much a challenge of what we believe, nor is it particularly a challenge of what we're doing. It is almost always, in my view, a challenge of style. How do we receive the contrary point of view? There's a story that Michael O'Loughlin tells in his book, Hidden Mercies, the story of how St. Vincent's Hospital in New York met the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And there was an occasion when ACT UP showed up in the reception to protest, and it put condoms on the arms of the crucifix and that sort of thing. And the sisters had been treating people with HIV/AIDS for a long time. They'd been doing this ministry. And a person could get angry in that situation. But their response was to ask a question. What do they need from us that we're not giving them? They looked inward. And it transformed what they were doing because it transformed how they were doing it. They were asking, not, are we doing the wrong thing, but are we meeting people with the openness, with the Christian love, with everything that they need? Are we pouring ourselves out to them in the way that they need us to? I think style has to be thought about here. It has to, that Christian spirit of pouring ourselves out in love has to live in this most when we feel tempted to feel offended or angry about something.
Thank you. How do we work together as ministries of the church to elevate human dignity and the common good? Again, this is another, these questions are multiple, right? So let's stay with that right now. You're representing various dimensions of the church with Catholic healthcare, and the theme of this assembly is United for Change. What do we need to do? So any thoughts on that?
I can start here because I am representing Catholic Charities at a Catholic Health Assembly, and there are 170 local independent diocesan Catholic Charities agencies that comprise Catholic Charities USA. Our job is to serve each of them and help them to flourish in their mission to care for poor and vulnerable people who are experiencing their hardest days, of all faiths, all backgrounds, have nowhere to turn, and they know they can find mercy and care at Catholic Charities. 40 of them have a formal relationship with their local Catholic healthcare system and are doing extraordinary things in relationship. 5 of those 40 we are studying to great detail using the resources of the Academy to track data and measure and interpret, and in a few weeks the study will be unveiled. And what this particular partnership between these 5 Catholic charities and their corresponding Catholic healthcare systems is focused on are the chronically homeless brothers and sisters. And what they are realizing is that we are so much stronger together. It's a natural partnership because we are kindred spirits, same language, same resources to draw from, and same population that we care about. But the beautiful thing about this is that there is an economic solution that is emerging. And that is that if we act it together, as opposed to 2 separate entities, but act it together as the church, caring for the dignity of this population, of the people before us, and allocated resources, in this case, to ensure that they have stable housing, that with the wraparound services that come from going from chronically homeless to stable housing, you reduce the incredible cost in the ER, and you lengthen the time between visits back to the hospital. So the whole system is saved money, and the health of the clients are improved. That's just one population in 5 examples. But I think we intentionally working together with all of the brain power in this room could achieve extraordinary things and demonstrate to the nation a way forward.
Thank you, Kerry.
About 2 years ago, the Vatican started investing in personnel. It wasn't the tradition for many, many years. I've worked there for 24. But 2 years ago, they started off a course for secretaries. So the heads of dicasteries are prefects, and the number 2s are secretaries. And it was discerning leadership was really the title given to it, but it was a human development, always starting with prayer and scripture, always concluding with prayer as well, but an opportunity for us to grow and understand how we can be better in leadership. But what we discovered very early on was that the real bonus and the real gain here was when we could learn to work with each other and when we could be united, because the various offices of the Roman Curia all have exclusive competence to deal with their own particular material. Otherwise, if it's everybody's business, then nobody did it. So this was a way of guaranteeing that the job would get done. And although we were serving one pope and one church, we weren't really acting as one. So this initiative has built upon and has flourished, of course, into other things as well. It means that we're able to relate to each other more easily. We're in I know you don't use WhatsApp in the US, but we use a WhatsApp group chat. And if I need to make contact with people, even the people who work with me are looking at me and thinking, you know the secretary and bishops? You know the secretary? And yes, of course we do. And it's a great way to flourish. And I'll just maybe finish this point with a quote from Saint Irenaeus, who says that the glory of God is the human person who's fully alive. And when we're fully alive and fully engaged, then we're showing forth a very different and more joyful face to the church.
Steve?
I had the luxury of gazing down upon all of this from a comfortable perch in an ivory tower. I don't engage in ministry outside of my parish really at all, except I suppose for grading. But a couple of observations come to mind. If you have not yet gotten all the way through Magnificat Humanitas, one of the most shocking, jaw-dropping things in that document, at least for me, was the link that Pope Leo drew between the social teaching of the church and synodality, by saying that social doctrine is a fruit of shared discernment. And so in one sense, you know, I hear this idea that we all have to do this together. The conversation needs to be wide. And in fact, we need to see over the tops of our silos to see that we're trying to address ourselves to something that is a little bit more whole and a little bit more inclusive than our tendency to parse it out from one dicastery to another. I will leave it to you also to reflect on your own about the implications of saying that doctrine is a fruit of shared discernment. We'll leave that for another time. But I would just say to also add to this, one of my favorite things to teach is Pope Paul's Populorum Progressio. I teach the course on Catholic social teaching at CTU. And in Populorum Progressio, Pope Paul talks about what human flourishing means. And he makes it very clear that human flourishing vastly exceeds sustenance. It's not enough to simply survive. And he actually names in paragraph 21 that there is a right to art and culture and refinement. And what he's really telling us is that there is a human right to beauty and to experience and discover your own creativity. And my point in saying that, in one sense, is to reinforce the importance and the urgency of a wide synodal conversation among persons and ministries, because everyone contributes something. But my other purpose in saying that too is that no one of our ministries can really do much more than help one avenue of human flourishing. We all have to work together to really achieve what flourishing, the really tall order that flourishing actually is.
Can I just add one point to what you said, Steve? Because not only in this group of secretaries, but also translating what we learn back in the daily office experience, is that we have discovered that we have so many wonderful, talented, committed, intelligent, good-hearted people that all the experts that you need to basically confront any problem are there. And this is the thing that we need to learn in the church as well, that as the Catholic Church globally, we have so much to offer. If only we can tap into the resources, if only we can make contact and network with other people, we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel every time. And this is one thing that Cardinal Michael Czerny, who is in the Dicastery for Integral Human Development, this is something that they have discovered, because in the past, the 4 separate offices that were independent have now been fused together. And the tradition of the Roman Curia was to tell the local church, we know better, and this is how you need to do things. But Michael Czerny has changed. He's turned the whole thing on its head. And he says, we're not going to do it that way anymore. What we will say is that if Kerry has a project in one city and needs advice about Steve's project in the other, they will put the two of you together and you can work out together how best you could share resources. And if only we could extend this in Catholic healthcare, even worldwide, the options and the possibilities would be limitless.
The other parts of that question, I just want to read this and I'll make a comment and invite you to comment back. How do we work together as ministries of the church to elevate human dignity and the common good? Increasing access to care, strengthening communities, which includes protecting the environment, upholding the dignity of the marginalized, particularly migrants and those who are poor. All those activities I keep thinking about, and those who know me, I've said I have had the privilege of working in social service, education, and now healthcare. And it's been my experience through the years, we only come together when we have a need. That we've not learned to break down the barriers to work together, because the end goal of all our activities really is about human flourishing. So access to care doesn't mean access to a clinic or a hospital. It's access to what you need, whole person care, right? Everything we've talked about housing, mental health, a whole host of things. The church has a history of being very parochial. And I love what you said about even breaking down the barriers. I've been to the various dicasteries and recognized the fact they often don't talk to each other. So, we're trying to work around that. Any thoughts of saying, how do we get beyond ourselves and who we have been to who we need to be in order to respond to the needs of the day?
I would very much want to say this. As quickly as we have received Magnificat Humanitas, and it seems clear from that document there's still more work to do, I think, we have not yet fully, really received the implications of Fratelli Tutti. Which, to my way of thinking, to take nothing away from any other teaching of any other pope, Fratelli is fundamentally new in a really important way for the way that it puts this question you're asking, at the heart of everything we do as Christians in the world. We are called to, well, I won't say fraternity. When Cardinal Czerny came to CTU and talked about it, he gently retitled the encyclical Siblings All. But fraternity and friendship and solidarity. And I'd want to add something here too, because it comes back to the first question. It's not just a problem in the church. And I often think it's not even primarily a problem of the church. I sometimes think it is something that the church has absorbed from the culture of how all of us live in the world and go into workplaces, right? Or work in academic institutions with distinct academic departments that don't talk to one another. There's a kind of a pervasive individualism and siloing that is culturally present everywhere, and it has its uses for expertise and for other kinds of things too, but it's also a very dangerous habit of mind that I sometimes think the church has learned from the world, not to think in the way that Jesus has asked us to think, as though we are all one human family together, and to place that idea at the heart of everything. I would really say, when I teach it, I say Fratelli Tutti has reframed Catholic social teaching because it has placed solidarity at the center of everything. It explains why we are concerned about the dignity of every human person and the worker and so on and so forth. It explains why those three things you named, increasing access to care and placing the vulnerable at the center and creating communities, it explains why those are the same thing, because they all redound back to, can we actually recognize we need one another? And recognizing that now, can we work together?
I have a thought which comes from our own Irish language, and there's a phrase which says, Mull an oige agus tukichi. And for those of you who know what I said, you know that it means praise the youth, the young people, and they will flourish. And I think we have an opportunity in a world which is increasingly growing in terms of network, and with a young generation which is much more savvy than our generation, that if we're going to want to make them flourish, I think we need to invest time in speaking and encouraging young people who are so eager to learn, so curious, so interested, and we have the possibility of really making a serious contribution to the future. We're not going to see what the future is going to be, but that's what the great-hearted men and women of the past did in laying the first stone of basilicas and cathedrals, knowing that they would never see them completed. But we have the chance to do that for the next generation and to ensure flourishing for many years to come.
May I just say to that very briefly, the only woman cited in Magnificat Humanitas was the German Jewish political theorist Hannah Arendt. It's a rather shocking thing, actually, but for Arendt, her central idea redounds to sort of what she calls natality. That what is important and beautiful in our social life is the constant rebirthing that is always happening all around us. But the important thing is that we have to be willing to welcome all of that newness without ever knowing what it means, and still encourage it and welcome it and not respond to it with offense and anger, right? But to ask, how can we give? How can we flourish? How can we praise the youth? This is a political idea that I think also speaks a very Catholic language.
Thank you, Stephen. So we were talking about how we as church come together and break down barriers in order to collaborate more effectively. But back to Brian Hare, we live and breathe in a secular society. We're part of industries that we operate with business practices to be a part of those industries. How do we bring other people of goodwill to join us in elevating human flourishing? because we don't do this alone.
I thought a great clue to the answer to that question happened on this stage earlier this morning. David Brooks got up and he just told stories, and all of us cried. And all of us thought, I want to be a better person. I want to be more just, more merciful, more compassionate, more patient, more attentive. I want to behold others. Many of his stories were not about famous people. Some were, most weren't. There's something so ennobling about telling stories of moral goodness. When I travel the country, I see so much yearning for moral heroism, not for perfection, just basic moral heroism. And all of the moral heroes in my life do not think of themselves as saintly or as heroic. They are just living authentically out of values. So I think we have a great opportunity. The church has probably never had such an opportunity if we can be unified and grounded in our Christian values to tell the stories of all of the good that is being done in the name of the church across all of these ministries and apostolates, all with the same commitment to love of God and love of neighbor. Catholic Charities has a brand new mobile museum that is traveling the country for 2.5 years, coming to all of your dioceses, that showcases the stories of Catholic Charities volunteers and workers. They're telling the story of how encountering one family or one person in need had a positive impact on their life, on their sense of generosity, on their faith. It is so beautiful. And I think we can do that for each other. We don't have to talk about our work. I can talk about yours, Sister Mary, and show people that there is a reason for hope. And who doesn't want to belong to such a consistent, conscious effort to be a beneficial presence in the world?
One of the things that we do about 3 times a week is welcome groups of bishops who are making their ad limina visits to the Pope and to the tombs of St. Peter and St. Paul in Rome. And we have an opportunity to listen and to learn from them and find out what they're doing each day. Many of the bishops who work in dioceses where the Catholic population is incredibly small often speak about the challenges, but they also speak about the beautiful things that happen as well, particularly in countries where, for example, just take Muslim countries, where Muslim families will send their children to Catholic schools because they are convinced that the standards, the faith, the ethics, and the level of education is just beyond what they will get if they go to the regular school. And it reminds me in many ways that if you're a missionary or a bishop in one of those places, I think you're constantly trying to live in the present moment and to make the present moment as full and as beautiful as it possibly can. Those who live in the past are kind of stuck in the past. Those who are anxious are living in the future. But if you actually just live in the present moment and you're aware of the present moment and of its beauty and of its potential, it opens up an enormous range of possibilities. And there's one last thing that I often come back to. The author Anne Lamott, if you've seen her, her TED talk, which is available on YouTube, she talks about a list of all the things that she wants to know are sure, are guaranteed in life. And the last thing she mentioned, which I think is particularly significant for us as Catholics, is that she said, at the end of the day, when you think about it, all we're doing is walking each other home.
That's beautiful. You reminded me of something we talk about a lot in Catholic healthcare, particularly in the formation programs that we run, and that you don't have to be Catholic to work within Catholic healthcare. And I'm sure Catholic Charities, Catholic education, we can go on. But you have to be able to, if you're a leader, articulate who we are, our identity. That's important. And I think I have certainly grown in realizing and experiencing the number of people who may be of no faith, who so align with our values. Your comment about a Muslim family going to, a Catholic school or whatever. I remember years ago an article of, it was a Muslim student who was attracted to Catholic universities. They saw an increase in enrollment of Muslim students of Catholic universities because of prayer was a part of that experience. And you'd have these students in the chapel praying their daily prayers. And so it's not about being Catholic, it's about being faith-filled and your expression of that. So you remind me of that comment, and that's something I think for us as we look at being more united for change and breaking down some of those barriers. It's going to take more than Catholic works to do what is necessary in our world today.
I want to address agreeing with all of that, and you're talking about things that are very much part of my experience, certainly at CTU. I'd talk a lot about that if we had time. But I want to talk about that word secular for a minute. It was St. Augustine who recognized and used the word seculum. The church lives in this age. The church lives in the world. The church lives in time. His purpose, though, was to underscore that this church is on a pilgrimage through this world. It wasn't a necessary opposition. That's something that came after the French Revolution. But secularity itself isn't conflict. It isn't opposition. Not really, not for the church, not for how we think about it. What we have in the four Gospels is exactly what we're all talking about here. What did Jesus do? He listened to people. I heard someone talking yesterday about how, walking with people, Jesus would listen to people. And sometimes as the apostles would squabble about who sits on my right and who sits on my left, I can walk ahead and you guys can talk among yourselves for a while. I won't listen so closely. But he walked with people, he listened to people, he told stories. And he did all of this at a time when we could not imagine a more oppressive government than the Roman Empire. And yet that scarcely came up, right? It's not so much about changing the world in that way or about, restoring the place of the church in social and political life, or all of those things that we sometimes squabble about. And Jesus should walk ahead of us while we squabble and not listen so closely, maybe. It is really about being ourselves on this pilgrimage, making friends with everyone while we're walking one another home.
Can I just pick up on what you're
Please.
saying, Stephen? Because has anybody done the Camino de Santiago?
Part of it.
I see some hands, excellent. I've done it 3 times, and if you've done it, it's just the most amazing experience because pilgrims help pilgrims. And if a person looks tired, they'd often give them some candy or some water or something to do. And it does change your mind on how you see your life. You do see your life as a pilgrimage, and it makes you more grateful. And it makes you more aware of the needs of other people and that you're walking with them. And I think if we could sort of download that and put it into our operating system and try and help each other a little bit more, the world could be a better place.
We'd come out with some of that solidarity you experience on the Pilgrim Road.
I'm going to give an opportunity just to say from each of you, as we wrap this up, we're gathered here intentionally around what the church is facing in our world today, what our ministries are being called to do to continue to extend the mission of Jesus in our world. From each of your perspectives, what would you want to say to us as leaders of Catholic healthcare as we go forward?
I would say you are not alone. We are not alone. This is a moment of profound opportunity to be unified, to restore civility, to build bridges, to sow seeds of peace, to be unapologetic about the dignity of the human person. We have all of the ingredients at our disposal. Catholic social teaching. I think I'm Catholic because of Catholic social teaching, and not just because I'm sitting next to my friend here. It's a blueprint for how we ought to treat each other and our common home. It's such a gift to the world. Why doesn't the world know about it more? So I would say we're not alone. This is a moment for tremendous unity, to be a good steward of all that has been entrusted to us, to be the Good Samaritan, to be Christ-like. And a friend, my final note is a friend of mine, Mac McCarter, talks about the one thing that we all have in common is that we care. So given that there's divisiveness and political divisions, we all care. We care about something, and we do a million kind acts as a collective human family all of the time, but it's like breathing. We don't even pay attention to it. What gets attention is the terrible, egregious act. But all of these kind acts of caring. And he says, caring alone will not heal the world, but caring together just might. And I think we can lead that in this day.
Beautiful. Thank
I'd like to say thank you, because as I said earlier, for generations I've been the recipient of Catholic healthcare. And so I'd like to express gratitude for what you do, especially on the days that are difficult. I'd like to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing in good times and in bad. I'd say to you, look out and support each other. Try and help each other notice the need that a person might have. I'd also say to you, pray together and try and deepen your faith and try and understand the reason why you're doing this. And in that way, not only does your heart become richer and your actions are filled with more love, your actions are also filled with more faith. And in God's mysterious ways, he will work through you, and people will see his hand at work in your lives.
I don't know what I can add to either of those, really. And yet, go on I shall. Say but the word, and I will go on. I think the most wonderful thing Pope Leo wrote in Magnificat is he wrote about when Pope Leo XIII released Rerum Novarum. There were those critics, he says, who chided Pope Leo, his predecessor, because the church should really just focus on preaching the message of eternal life. Stay out of the worldly stuff. Leo XIV goes on to say that Leo XIII was far more wise than that Leo XIII understood and went forward because the concrete lives of persons are part of the message of eternal life. It's throughout the gospel. It's what we believe. The task of leadership and trying to improve the concrete lives of people is always going to be thankless. And perhaps for reasons we've touched on, never more thankless than now, or rarely at least more thankless than now. And yet, I think to echo something Archbishop said, I want to say to all of you, we can let ourselves off the hook this way. None of us has to fix it. The job is too big. None of us can repair the world, or at least not alone. I think oftentimes, because we have the advantage of education and prosperity and communication and technology, we have an outsized feeling of my personal responsibility for everything. And there are some there are some things in our faith that perhaps dispose us to feel that way about the world too. That's a mistake because it's defeating. We're defeated when we take that weight on ourselves. We are strengthened when we walk the road together. And so in those moments when it's thankless and it's difficult, we walk the road together, we meet the vulnerable person, we tend to their concrete needs, and we tend to each other. That vulnerable person will be me from time to time. None of us is walking alone. That's the meaning of the church, and I hope you can go forward with that certainty.
Can I just give you another example from the office? Cardinal Müller, who from Germany, from Bavaria, he called me into his office one day and he said, "Look," and he was pointing to his desk. "Look," he said, "Sir, so much paper. We have so many problems all the time, problems." And I said, "Well, yeah," I said, "since 1542, since we were founded." But I said, "We're here because we have solutions." And that sort of calmed him down for a moment. And that's what I would say to you as well. We can be overwhelmed by the enormity of the work that we have to do. But let's remind ourselves that we're in the world and we have solutions, answers, proposals, ideas. We have a way forward. We can do it together. We may not see the entire fruit or the harvest of the work that we're doing, but we have to maintain a light in our heart and a hope that we are making an enormous and a visible difference in the world and not lose heart.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I personally want to thank each of you, not only for your time with us today, but for the work you do day in and day out on behalf of the church. Kerry and I work together, our teams work together, Catholic Charities, Catholic Health Association. Archbishop, you've been so gracious to the Catholic Health Ministry for our ecclesiology program. When I'm in Rome with the executive committee and the board chair, always being present to us. And Stephen, I'm looking forward to even more engagement with you now and listening to what you've had to share. So please join me in thanking our distinguished panel today. Good job.
Great job.
Thank you. You can go ahead and sit down.